They called it the greatest battle implement ever devised. But in the mud of Normandy and the jungles of the Pacific, it was also the rifle that could get you killed. A sound, a tiny metallic ping, could mean the difference between life and death. And every soldier carrying one knew it. This is the hidden story of the M1 Garand, the weapon that changed the face of modern warfare and quietly broke the men who carried it. Before the M1 Garand, American soldiers were fighting with bolt-action rifles, relics from the First World War. Slow, heavy, outdated. In 1936, the U.S. Army wanted something faster, a weapon that could fire semi-automatically, round after round, without the soldier having to pull a bolt after every shot. The man behind that dream was John C. Garand, a Canadian-born engineer who worked for the U.S. Springfield Armory. He was a quiet man obsessed with precision, who believed he could design the perfect rifle, one that would make every American soldier more lethal, more confident, and more unstoppable than any enemy on Earth. The rifle he built, the M1 Garand, was revolutionary. It fired a powerful .30-06 round and could hold 8 of them in an N-block clip. With each pull of the trigger, the rifle reloaded itself using gas pressure, a smooth, automatic action that was decades ahead of its time. To the generals in Washington, it was the perfect weapon for a new kind of war, fast, mobile, and deadly. By 1941, when the United States entered World War II, the M1 Garand was issued to nearly every infantryman. To the public, it was a symbol of American power. To the soldiers, it was their lifeline. They learned to clean it in the dark, to load it under fire, and to trust it like a brother. But trust on the battlefield is fragile. Because what the Army didn't say, and what soldiers quickly learned, was that the M1 Garand had a dark side. During testing, military officials called it a masterpiece. It fired faster than the German Mauser and hit harder than the Japanese Arisaka. U.S. propaganda praised it as the weapon that would win the war. But early reports from the field told a different story. In North Africa, soldiers complained about jams and mechanical failures caused by sand. In the cold of the Ardennes, the lubricants froze and the action seized up. And in the wet jungles of Guadalcanal, humidity warped the wooden stock and rusted the gas system. One Marine remembered it this way: the Army couldn't afford bad publicity. So, while soldiers were learning the rifle's quirks the hard way, the War Department doubled down on the myth of perfection. In training films, recruits were told, "The M1 will not fail you if you do your part." That phrase, "if you do your part," became an unspoken contract. If your rifle jammed, it wasn't the rifle's fault. It was yours. The weapon had been elevated beyond criticism, a symbol of American engineering and pride. But behind the praise and patriotic slogans, there were small, deadly truths hiding in plain sight. The M1 Garand's design was genius, but was also fragile in its simplicity. It relied on an 8-round and block clip, ejected automatically with a sharp metallic ping when empty. That ping would later become one of the most debated and feared sounds of the war. Some veterans swore that the enemy learned to recognize it, that the distinctive ping told them when an American rifle was empty. It might sound like a small detail, but in a foxhole, under fire, small details could get you killed. The M1 Garand was heavy, over 10 pounds loaded. With ammunition, water, and gear, that added up fast. In the hedgerows of France, men slogged through mud with the rifle clutched to their chest, praying it wouldn't jam at the worst moment. Every rifleman carried his own rituals: grease the bolt, wipe the chamber, tap the clip just right. Because if the rifle didn't cycle, you might not get a second chance. In the brutal street fighting of Aachen, soldiers learned to carry extra clips loose in their pockets, ready to jam in with shaking hands. 8 rounds went fast, faster than anyone expected. And when a firefight broke out, the semi-automatic advantage could vanish in seconds. Back home, newspapers called the M1 Garand the rifle that won the war. It was fast, it was modern, and it was American-made, everything the propaganda machine wanted. But on the front lines, soldiers whispered a different nickname: the jam rod. Or worse, old reliable, until it isn't. They still respected it. Many loved it, but they also feared it. Because when your life depends on a piece of machinery, love and fear are two sides of the same coin. By 1944, the M1 Garand had become part of America's military identity. Every soldier had one, every photograph showed one, and every victory seemed to depend on it. It became the symbol of the U.S. infantryman, rugged, determined, unstoppable. But in the ruins of Europe and the jungles of the Pacific, some men began to question whether the rifle's reputation had outgrown its reality. The M1 Garand was born from innovation and pride, a promise of American superiority on the battlefield. But as the war dragged on, that promise came under fire, literally. In the next chapter, we'll go inside the weapon's dark reality. The flaws that engineers ignored, the lives they cost, and the uncomfortable truth behind America's most celebrated rifle. By late 1944, the M1 Garand had seen every corner of the war, from the beaches of Normandy to the volcanic slopes of Iwo Jima. It was praised in every newspaper, glorified in every newsreel. But for the soldiers holding the rifle when the shooting started, glory didn't mean much. Because on the battlefield, the M1 Garand showed its cracks, both literal and metaphorical. Let's start with that sound, the ping. When the last round was fired, the empty clip was ejected with a distinct metallic ring. To engineers, it was a harmless byproduct. To soldiers, it was an alarm bell. Some veterans swore the Germans learned to exploit it, that when they heard the ping, they'd rush the trench, knowing the American rifle was empty. Military historians still debate whether the ping myth cost lives. But soldiers in foxholes didn't need studies or reports. When you believe your rifle gives away your position, that belief alone can kill confidence. And confidence is everything in combat. Then came the mechanical flaws. The M1 Garand was designed for precision, but precision hates dirt. In the Sahara, dust clogged the gas cylinder. In Italy, mud froze inside the bolt. In the Pacific, salt air corroded the springs. The rifle's gas-operated system, its greatest strength, was also its Achilles heel. One speck of sand, one drop of water in the wrong place, and the rifle could jam solid. In combat, soldiers shared spares, swapped parts, and learned tricks to keep their rifles alive. Some carried cleaning rods strapped to their packs. Others simply prayed the next round would chamber. It wasn't about perfection anymore. It was about survival. On paper, the M1 Garand's 8-round clip was a revolution, double the capacity of most bolt-action rifles of the era. In reality, it was a cruel tease. In the chaos of combat, 8 rounds could disappear in seconds. Reinserting a new clip wasn't smooth, it required both hands and precise timing. If done wrong, the bolt could snap forward onto your thumb, creating a painful, bloody rite of passage known as Garand thumb. For soldiers, the rifle was like a stubborn partner, capable of brilliance one minute, betrayal the next. They both feared and loved it, but no one ever forgot its flaws. The flaws of the M1 Garand weren't just mechanical. They shaped tactics, changed how men fought, and sometimes decided who lived or died. In close combat, the semi-automatic advantage was real. You could lay down a storm of fire, forcing the enemy to duck. But when the fighting dragged on, that advantage turned to vulnerability. 8 rounds. Ping. Reload. Repeat. Meanwhile, German soldiers armed with the Mauser 98K, slower but more reliable, could fire from cover for hours without worrying about gas failures or clip jams. And that's where the real damage was done, in the mind. A weapon is more than metal and wood. It's trust. And once that trust is shaken, fear creeps in. The M1 Garand demanded near-perfect maintenance. Every night, soldiers stripped it, oiled it, checked the gas plug, the springs, the extractor. Not out of routine, out of anxiety. That kind of relationship leaves scars, not the kind you see on skin, but the kind that sit deep, long after the fighting ends. For every soldier who praised it, there was another who cursed it. The M1 Garand was not just a weapon. It was a gamble between engineering brilliance and battlefield chaos. And yet, despite everything, it still won the war. When the war ended in 1945, the M1 Garand became a legend. Photographs of victory showed it everywhere, from Berlin to Okinawa. But behind the photographs lay a different story, a rifle that both defined and limited the American infantryman. So what happened next? Did the Army keep it? Replace it? Forget it? The answer is complicated. After World War II, the M1 Garand remained in service through Korea and even early Vietnam. It was praised again, its accuracy, its power, its reliability, under certain conditions. But by the 1950s, a new truth had set in. The rifle was powerful, yes, but it was heavy, expensive to produce, and outdated in a new age of automatic fire. Wars were changing. So was the technology. The U.S. military wanted more rounds, faster reloads, and lighter weight. By 1957, the Garand was officially replaced by the M14, a modernized version with a detachable box magazine and selective fire. It was the end of an era. But even the M14 inherited the same DNA and the same problems of its ancestor. The gas system, the weight, The recoil. Every solution carried a trace of the original flaw. Ironically, the Garand's flaws shaped the future of small arms. Designers learned that soldiers needed rifles that were lighter, easier to maintain, and more forgiving under stress. That led to the birth of the M16, a weapon that traded power for portability, precision for adaptability. In museums, the M1 Garand sits behind glass, polished, mythologized, worshipped as the rifle that won World War II. Few visitors ever notice the small scratches on the receiver, the worn stocks, the places where soldiers' hands bled from recoil and shattered wood. History remembers victories. It rarely remembers the price paid for them. The M1 Garand gave the U.S. infantry a powerful edge, and in many ways, it deserved its praise. But for every smooth trigger pull, there was a soldier praying it wouldn't jam. For every metallic ping, there was a heart that skipped a beat. It wasn't just a weapon. It was a lesson in the cost of progress, how the pursuit of perfection in war always leaves something imperfect behind. The M1 Garand was called the greatest battle implement ever devised. Maybe it was, but greatness in war is never clean. It's earned in blood, in fear, and in the whispered regrets of those who carry it.